Yes, guys. So we are about 6 months away from the 2024 Paris Olympics. And today I thought I'd take a stab at creating an Olympic roster that is both realistic but also ideal. What up, guys? I'm Pete Douthit, host of the 11 Yanks Show. If you're new, we talk about everything in the American soccer landscape, especially the men's soccer landscape. Smash that like button, smash subscribe if you're new, and don't forget to turn your notifications on so that you get a notification when I put a video out and I can waste more of your time. Okay, so trying to predict or even create an Olympic roster is complicated, and it's complicated for several reasons. It's really not as simple as picking a normal U.S. men's national team roster. Number one, you're only allowed to take under 23 players. Number two, you can take 3 overage players, so you have to decide where those overage players fit best and also who's available. You're only allowed to bring 18 players. If it's crazy when you think about it. 18 players? That's nuts. It's a 2 or 3 week tournament. How are you only allowed to bring 18 players? To be fair, you're allowed to bring 4 alternates, okay? So they travel with the team, they train with the team, but they are not on the roster. If somebody gets injured and has to leave the roster altogether, you can replace one of them with one of those 4 alternates. So they'll be there with the team in Paris. They will not be able to play unless somebody else gets actually injured and has to leave completely, okay? So you have those 4 alternates, but still, it's not that much. Other things to consider. We have Copa America in the same summer, so that's a big one. Do we want any of our guys playing in both tournaments? And I'll talk about that a little bit. Obviously, who gets released by their clubs? This is not a FIFA tournament, so clubs are not required to release players. There's a lot of negotiating and a lot of hoping, and players have to, put up a little bit of a fight sometimes with their clubs, the way that Messi and Neymar had to do when they wanted to play in the Olympics. And of course, also the most important one, who gives us the best chance of success. So there's a lot of different factors to take into consideration. And I created a roster that I think is realistic in terms of getting players released, but also ideal in terms of who is going to give us the most success with the greatest chances of success in this tournament. I'll say this. I think that our guys in Europe will have an easier time getting released than our guys in MLS for the simple reason that the Olympics run from the last week of July to the second week of August. So, yes, the players in Europe would miss preseason, but at best, they would maybe miss one actual game for their clubs. Now, this might be easier for players who are already established. For example, let's say Josh Sargent, okay, already well established with his club. They might be more okay, or he might be more okay with missing one game for his club because he's an established starter for them and his place is not in danger. Now, if you're a younger player that's trying to break into a team and you don't really have a chance of, or you're maybe on the cusp of breaking in, and then you're not there for preseason, could that impact your chances of breaking into your club? Does your club even see you as somebody that can break in right now? For example, Jonathan Gomez. There's a lot of different factors to consider, but I will say that's a lot easier than some MLS teams. MLS will be in the thick of their season, right entering that playoff run. So some MLS teams will no doubt release their players and some may not. So there's a lot of wangling to do. There's predictions. There's a lot of it's a complicated thing, and some of this goes hand in hand with who Greg calls into the Copa America. I have not included players that I think are going to get called up to the Copa America roster. And the reason is because I don't think we should have 2 guys. Some people have asked me, should we have guys play in both tournaments? And my answer is no. And here's the reason why. It might be good in the moment, right, to have stronger players on both teams. And there are guys in the senior, team like Joe Scally and Gio Reyna and Folarin Balogun and Ricardo Pepi and Yunus Musa. Those 5 specifically are Olympic eligible. The problem is these guys play 30 to 40 games a year. Well, maybe not Gio right now, but he will be playing regularly. And so if they don't get a summer off because they're participating in 2 tournaments and then they have to jump right back into another very long season, it could affect them from both a fatigue and injuries point of view. So my answer would be no. Not to mention, if you take players for Copa America, I promise you there's no way their clubs are letting them go for Olympics. So the chance of taking players to both tournaments is extremely, extremely small. I would say almost nil. So for the sake of this video, I kept them separate. All right, let's just go ahead and jump into it. For the goalkeepers, I have Gabriel Slonina and Patrick Schulte. Now, there are three goalkeepers that are really in contention for this. It's Slonina, Schulte, and Chris Brady. I don't think that the Chicago Fire are going to release Chris Brady. Why not? Well, they didn't release him for the Under-20 World Cup, and they didn't release him for this January camp roster. So I have no reason to believe they're going to continue to release him. And let's be honest, guys, the Chicago Fire are going to have another important season, chasing the lofty goal of not being in the bottom two in the Eastern Conference. So going to represent your country in the Olympics has to take a back seat to learning how to be even more incompetent than you were last season. No, the truth is, I think Chris Brady is going to have a very good season. He already had a very good season for the Fire last year, and I think he's only going to continue to grow and get better. And I think he should be here in this roster. But with Gabriel Slonina and Patrick Schulte, I think these are the two guys that will end up going. Slonina will be interesting because he'll still be at Chelsea. His time with the Belgian club that he's at now, Eupen, will have expired, so it will be kind of preseason. It might actually be a good shopping window if Gabriel Slonina starts because the tournament ends around August 10th. There's still 3 more weeks in the transfer window for Chelsea to find another good loan for him. He's not going to be ready to play for Chelsea, obviously. But they put him in the not shopping window, but the sort of demonstration window of, oh, this guy was a starter in the Olympics. Maybe he'll be able to translate that to a loan to a better league, like perhaps the Eredivisie or the Championship, or maybe even the French league, although I'm not sure if he's ready for that. As far as who starts here, I think Gabriel Slonina is the more experienced keeper, even though technically Patrick Schulte is older. Gabriel Slonina played a full year and a half in MLS before playing another full year in the Belgian league on loan from Chelsea. Patrick Schulte will have had a year and a half in MLS. Gabriel Slonina also has that Under-20 World Cup under his belt and that experience, which I think will serve him. Now, that doesn't mean that Gabriel Slonina should start or that he's necessarily the better keeper right now. Schulte did have a very good year with Columbus. Both of them are very good shot stoppers. I think both of them struggle a little bit with their feet, although Gabriel Slonina is getting better in that regard because in Belgium he's being forced to play with his feet. It'll be interesting to see if Patrick Schulte plays much with his feet this year for Columbus. I would probably start Gabriel Slonina, but I don't think the gap between these two right now is that big. Now, some people might say, Pete, what about a guy like Drake Callender or Roman Celentano, where they're not really Olympic eligible, and I am saving my overage players for more crucial positions where we actually need more quality, where we don't have talent in those positions. So I'm only bringing 2 keepers because I only have an 18-man roster, so I've got to make cuts somewhere. I'm not sure if you're required to bring 3 keepers. I don't think you are if it's an 18-man keeper, but I think one of your 4 alternates has to be a keeper. Now, the question is, who do you bring as that alternate? Chris Brady, if he's not released to be in the roster or to start, is definitely not going to be released to be an alternate, to just sit there for 3 weeks. That's my concern. Otherwise, it would obviously be, to be honest, if they released Brady, I would probably bring Brady and Slonina and have Schulte be the alternate. But reality is they're not going to release Brady. And again, I don't want to waste a overage spot on one of those guys, so I'd probably bring a Gavin Beavers from RSL, the 18-year-old, or maybe an Antonio Carrera from Dallas as the alternate goalkeeper as an emergency.
Underdog Fantasy Sports is back with a new and improved pick'em game across all sports that makes it easy to play fantasy sports with just a few clicks. Each sport allows you to build a parlay that includes between 2 and 5 predictions about the outcomes of player projections. As you would expect, the more picks you include, the greater the potential payout. Don't go crazy with it and play responsibly, but adding a few bucks here and there to a game gives it a little more excitement and stakes. Use my promo code 11yanks or click the link in the description to start playing, and Underdog will match whatever you put in your account up to $100. Enjoy!
Let's talk about fullbacks now, and I can only bring 3 fullbacks. Well, I can bring more, but I only have, 18 guys on the roster, so I have to make cuts, and I think this is the best way to go. Brian Reynolds at right back, and then Caleb Wiley and Jonathan Gomez at left back. Now, Jonathan Gomez is especially important here because he can also play right back. We saw that at the Under-20 World Cup. Remember that goal he scored in the opening game? That was from him playing at right back. So I'm excited to see Jonathan Gomez. He's getting some good experience now in the Spanish second division, and I think that could serve him quite well going into the Olympics. It's a question of, are Sociedad going to release him for this tournament? And that's probably based on, well, do they think that he is ready to really push for a spot in the senior team next season? Because if so, they might want him there for preseason. But if not, they might go, well, we don't think he's good enough to play for Sociedad, which would be fair. I mean, they're probably going to be in the Champions League again next year. But maybe we let him go to the Olympics, and if he shows well, we can either sell him on or we can loan him out to maybe, another La Liga club, or heck, maybe we loan him to an Eredivisie club at a higher level than the Spanish second division in order for him to continue to get growth and minutes. But I would have Jonathan Gomez there if Sociedad releases him. And because I don't think he's ready to push for a spot with their senior team, I think they will release him. So I think this is realistic. Now, some people might say, why do you have Caleb Wiley there and not John Tolkien? I think John Tolkien and Caleb Wiley are very similar. I think that Caleb Wiley has a higher ceiling, which is why he's there. And I think he's a bit more technical than John Tolkien. What John Tolkien could offer is, especially toward the end of last season, he was quite dangerous with his free kicks and set pieces. Now, I don't know if that overrides what to me are some pretty technical limitations. He's just very limited technically. And I would bring Caleb Wiley. I would listen to arguments for John Tolkien because I know there are a lot of people that I respect a lot who really rate John Tolkien. So I probably wouldn't be mad if it was John Tolkien. Just personally, when I watch him, I don't see it. But guys, I've been wrong before. I might be wrong on this one too. Center backs now, and this is where I really have to use the overage center backs. We don't have strong under 23 center backs. In fact, if you look at our under 23 center backs, you've got Brandon Craig, who can't get a single minute in MLS, Justin Shea, who's playing in the second division of the Eredivisie, and then you've got Josh Winder, who's in Benfica's academy, and playing with their under 19s, but I don't know if he's ready for an under 23 spot, especially because he is just, turning 18 now. So he's very, very young still. I would bring two overage center backs in Mark McKenzie and Austin Trusty. And then the third one would be Olympic eligible Jalen Neal. I think Jalen Neal's had a very good breakout season with the Galaxy last year and played in the Gold Cup before his injury. And hopefully he's going to be a starter again for the Galaxy this year. I know the Galaxy are just bringing in another center back from Japan. So I don't know if they're going to pair him with Maya Yoshida at the back or if Jalen Neal is going to continue to start. We'll have to see, but Jalen Neal's passing is the best of anybody in this group, and he has all the potential to be a very, very good center back down the road. It looks like he's bulked up a little bit in the offseason, so I have him there. Would I start him? I would probably go Jalen Neal and Austin Trusty. I like Mark McKenzie, and certainly, 3 years in the Belgian league has probably served him well. But I'm not sure if I really think Mark McKenzie is the best option right now. Maybe he is. Maybe Mark McKenzie and Austin Trusty is the way to go. Neither of these guys, though, has the passing range of a Jalen Neal, and that's why he kind of has the edge for me. But these are the three center backs I would bring. Now, personally, I think Austin Trusty should be in Copa America over Miles Robinson, but we all know Greg Berhalter, and Berhalter will bring Miles to Copa, which would at least allow Austin Trusty, hopefully, to be an overage Olympic player. For the alternate center back, I would probably try to get Maximilian Dietz. He plays in the second division over in Germany, and he would be my alternate, is Olympic eligible, but he would be my other option, and also my option if one of these three guys doesn't get released. Let's talk about midfielders now. I have Aiden Morris, Diego Luna, Jack McGlynn, Paxton Aronson, and Tanner Tessman. All of these guys are Olympic eligible, so I'm not using any of my overage players in midfield. And to be honest, I'll say from an Olympic perspective, we're pretty stacked in midfield. There are a lot of guys that are not here that could miss out. To be honest, I would probably have Brian Gutierrez here over somebody like Paxton Aronson. But again, I don't think the Fire are going to release him. So I've got Paxton, Luna, Morris, McGlynn, Tessman. Morris is more of the 6 defensive midfielder. Tanner Tessman can play as a 6 or as an 8, right? So a little bit of versatility there. Jack McGlynn is more of a pure 8. Luna and Aronson are both 10s. more attacking midfielders, but who can also play wide in a pinch. So some versatility here. There are lots of guys that miss out. Benjamin Kremaski, Noel Buck, Obed Vargas, guys like that could maybe push for a spot in this roster. Josh Atencio is another one. Gianluca Busio is another. These are the 5 that I would bring, but I'd say we're pretty deep in terms of this midfield group. So even if 1 or 2 of these guys aren't released, well, it's sort of next man up, and I don't think the quality drops off super, super significantly, which is at least a good thing from our midfield core. If I would also bring another midfielder as an alternate, honestly, I don't know who. You could make a case for a more defensive midfielder because we have 2 attacking midfielders. So that would be like a Josh Atencio or maybe an Obed Vargas. Maybe you could make a case for a Danny Edelman from the Red Bulls. You could also make a case for Brian Gutierrez if the Fire release him. But these are the 5 that I would bring. Wide forwards now, and this is where I do think we are quite weak. I have 3 wide forwards. Taylor Booth from Utrecht. Hopefully he gets released. Cade Cowell, who recently joined Chivas Guadalajara. And Bernard Kamungo, the young winger from Tanzania, who plays for FC Dallas. I don't love this group, to be honest. I think that Taylor Booth is, particularly this season, his development at Utrecht has slowed down. I don't think he's showed the potential that we saw from him last season. Cade Cowell has had, I don't even want to say Cade Cowell has had a major drop-off. I think that Cade Cowell, has shown mostly his good flashes at, the youth levels where he stands out because he's a very physically gifted player. But I think, and even in MLS last year, he had a very, very poor season. And I'm honestly kind of surprised that Chivas got him. Bernie Kamungo has shown flashes of being quite good in his first year in Dallas, and I think can play both sides, is left-footed, which neither Taylor nor Cade is. Very direct, very good 1v1, very quick. He would be my 3rd winger. So, another age-eligible player would be Kevin Paredes, but I don't have him here simply because I think he will be going to the Copa America as a depth piece in the wide areas. Then for forwards, I use my next overage player, and that would be Josh Sargent. For me, Josh Sargent is the 3rd best striker in our roster and probably won't go to Copa America unless Greg decides to bring him as wide depth options. And so I think he should then start for us in the Olympics. This team doesn't have a 9. Duncan Maguire, his breakout season for Orlando notwithstanding, is technically a very poor player and had a good rookie season. Okay, but anybody who's watched this kid play knows that he's got a very, very limited ceiling. Okay, I don't think he's anything special. I think we get excited about guys who start banging in a few goals in MLS. And then, more often than not, that does not translate outside MLS the way we saw with Jesus Ferreira or the way we saw with Brandon Vasquez, right? It just doesn't, certainly not on a global level. So he's here because he's Olympic eligible and could be a backup to Josh Sargent. But Josh Sargent is my guy. And I think with him starting up top, our chances of, making a semifinal become a whole lot better there. He's especially if he can stay healthy. We'll see if Norwich releases him. I hope they do. But these would be the 2 forwards that I would bring. Potentially a Haji Wright could be a backup, but I don't really want to use another overage spot. As far as Olympic eligible strikers, we really don't have many. Ferreira is not. Vasquez is not. Pifok obviously isn't. Wright isn't either, which is why I'm using the overage guys. So these are the guys I would bring. And honestly, I think overall this could be a pretty decent lineup roster. If you had Gabriel Slonina in goal, you had a back 4 of Austin Trusty, Jalen Neal, Caleb Wiley, and Brian Reynolds. Then you had a midfield of, say, Aiden Morris, Diego Luna, and Jack McGlynn. Wingers like Bernie Kamungo and Taylor Booth with Josh Sargent up top. I think that's a team that can certainly do some damage, but we'll wait and see who ends up getting called up and who ends up going to the Olympics to represent the U.S. men's national team. All right, guys, that is my take on the Olympic roster. It's complicated. It's very fluid. Let me know what you think. Who would you bring on this roster? Who do you think is going to get released? Who isn't? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to smash that like button. I'll talk to you guys soon.